we trying to build a bond with our customer, or are we trying to activate a sale? We need to do both, and we need to do both in protection of the brand's reputation. And when we do that holistically as a single solution, we build a business that goes from name recognition to a household name.
What if you could eliminate just one obstacle to unlock exponential growth in your business? Meet Ryan Chute, a strategic marketing expert at Wizard of Ads, who specializes in transforming small businesses into major brands by removing the friction that stifles growth. Ryan's upcoming book, Frictionless, encapsulates his journey from a high-friction retail environment to leading an 8-figure creative consulting agency. Join us as Ryan shares how cutting through common setbacks can pave the way for smoother, more profitable business operations. Ryan, welcome to Seek Go Create.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Glad that you're here, Ryan. We're going to have a fun conversation. Let's go big. Let's start off big here. I'm going to give you the choice. Which question do you want to answer? What do you do? Or who are you? Just go ahead and choose and start answering.
I rarely get the chance of answering the question who I am, so I'll take the path less trodden. And who I am is a man of principle, a person who grew up in a high friction environment. There's past traumas, there's past challenges that have shaped the person that I am today, and in more recent years have come to realize that I need to work on myself, and I need to work on inner leadership and inner leader. For me to be the leader, the tribe leader, and the individual leader, not only as a boss, as a person who contributes to a large organization, but as a dad and as a husband and as a person in my communities that I also associate and appreciate deeply. You know, when I think about what I'm trying to achieve, I'm trying to achieve something bigger than myself that is going to give back significantly to this universe. And I've chosen a tribe of people that I really, really appreciate in the services space, people who are often underappreciated in what some feel is an ugly duckling business. And it's not a sexy thing to sell or market for. And I really love the challenge of that. And I've gotten very good at cracking that code to be able to serve people really well from the top of the funnel straight down to the things that matter in our lives that aren't associated to business.
So one of the words you led off with is the word principles. And I'm always intrigued, but that's one of these big words, I believe, in the world we're in today. And I know we'll be talking about some techniques, tactics, and things like that in the area of ads and marketing that you specialize in as we move along. But I think a lot of people, I don't want to say they're lacking principles. I don't think the thing I want to say, but I think it takes a certain person to add that into their vocabulary.
Mhm. Mhm.
Have you always had that in your vocabulary of who you are, or did that arrive at some point along the way? And if so, when?
I've always been a person of high principle. You know, I see what's just and unjust in this world and pick a side. So ultimately, I have hills that I die on, and usually to my detriment, because I'm operating off of a fairly high level of honesty and integrity. Um, I'm trying hard not just to serve myself, and it's not that people lack principles; it's that they lack conviction of those principles, and that comes down to a fundamental understanding that I have. Let's get deep real quick here and talk about values and beliefs. You know,
Leaders, let me ask you a question. Are you driving your organization forward, or are you just reacting to the daily chaos? If you're feeling stuck in the weeds, constantly putting out fires, and struggling to focus on the big picture, it's time to shift gears. As a leader, your greatest strength is your ability to think strategically and proactively. That's what leading is. But I get it. When you're caught up in the day-to-day grind, it's hard to step back and develop a clear plan. That's where I come in. I specialize in helping leaders like you implement strategies that move your leadership and your organization from reactive to proactive. I'm offering a free 30-minute coaching call to help you identify actionable strategies to become a more proactive and strategic leader. Whether you're preparing for a new season, tackling fresh challenges, or just ready to take the next step, this call will give you clarity and direction. I guarantee it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start leading with purpose and strategy today. Book your free coaching call now by hitting the book coaching call link in the show notes or visit timwinders.com/coaching. Let's work together to take your leadership to the next level. That's timwinders.com/coaching, your first step toward leading with focus and intention. Now, back to the show.
Niels Bohr, the Nobel Prize winning physicist, once said that the opposite of a profound truth can very often be an equally profound truth. And that was the beginning of something in 2015 for me when Roy had first presented that to me at Wizard Academy, where I learned the principles of communication, branding, and doing marketing in a different way than I had been used to, which was deeply transactional, right? Effective, profitable, a lot of work, transactional, ever-changing, ever having to adjust and adapt to the situation. Circling back down to this last year, the year before last, Roy and Manley and I, Manley is another partner of ours. He's a pastor at a church in New Orleans. And he said, Ryan, it's interesting, your beliefs are worthless. And I said, Manley, that's a great way to start a conversation. Where are we going with this? And, justice and mercy are both profoundly true truths, but they can't live in the same space. It depends on which side of the table you're sitting on. The accused murderer wants to get mercy, and the victim's family wants to get justice. But what happens when the victim's family murders the murderer? Now what, right? A belief is easily interchangeable. It's convenient to change based on the situation. And that's the world that we live in today, is that we change our beliefs to suit ourselves. But that's not where value lives. Value lives in a place where you do something inconvenient for yourself to convenience another person, to elevate another person and other situations. And that value is what people value. And that's why we call it value, right? Because it's valuable. You're doing something that's worth something because it had an actual cost, right? And when we have an actual cost, now we have something that we can do that's better than. That's the thing that can bring us above what our competition is doing in whatever perception of competition you are. Sometimes it's yourself. Sometimes it's that guy who's hitting on your wife, and sometimes it's that other thing that's pulling your child's attention or affecting your business in some way, or your customer base as to whether they choose to buy from you or not. The employee who decides to work for you or go work for somebody else. All of these things fall into the same bucket. What are you doing that is actually valuable? And what are you doing that is just serving you conveniently? And that's why principles and value matter so much in this world, because we're missing that part of our life of actually putting ourselves into a position of struggle or sacrifice. And until we do, are we really serving at the highest level?
Yeah. And I think there's so much, I don't know, conflict is the right word, but maybe it is that there's the tension. We're going to talk about friction in a little while, but there's that tension between the two. To me, kind of from the seat that I'm in, it seems like people are picking their sides more and more. And there's still some people that are waffling between the two. And I believe it probably really comes into play when you begin working with some leaders and owners of businesses and companies, because you probably know really quickly if they're people of principle, value, what their culture is, all that type stuff. I want to get into that in just a little while because what I'd love to do first, you mentioned a time frame of 2015 seems to be a significant time for you. And I know from doing a little bit of research, you grew up, there was family business, you're up in Canada, there's some things with the way you grew up. And then I'm going to go back to the introduction that you had. You said that you are currently working on becoming the leader, the person, and things like that. I'm maybe not wording it exactly the way you did, but maybe just working on yourself. I guess I wanted to backtrack a little bit and give a little bit of background and maybe find out from you, what did some of the early experiences in your life, how did it play into what you're doing now? You know, growing up around a family business, it was a furniture company, different things like that. And then when did you become aware? Was it 2015? Was it earlier that you needed to start working on yourself? We've got a lot of leaders listening in. And these
Mhm.
leaders, if they're listening to this podcast, they're probably they've crossed over that threshold of, I need to go deeper. I need to think in a different way, values and all that. However, I love to hear people's stories and their journeys. So give me some of the high points and low points of, Ryan, the early years.
Yeah, the early years, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We were lower middle class. My grandfather was upper middle class in his family, so we knew that there was kind of this better world that we should be aspiring to, and lived in an environment, a really entrepreneurial space. My grandfather, my grandmother, both my parents, all entrepreneurs. I became an entrepreneur early on. I started in sales, which is an entrepreneurial journey into itself, and really wanted to go out there and help consult people. So started off with some low level training and then evolved from there as I went to university and all those things. I dropped out of high school, found out this August of 2024 that I have ADHD, and that's really been something that's affected my life and often affects the life of entrepreneurs who are typically on a pursuit of the dopamine dragon. And ultimately, I had I'd come to this loggerhead, from 2013 to 15, that I wasn't accelerating and being where I wanted to be in my life. I was doing things that I wanted to do. I felt like I was on this path, but it was such a struggle. It was such a grind. It was such um, um, a, a frustrating part of my life where I knew that I had more in me that I wasn't putting out there. So I went to the Wizard Academy. I had been reading the Monday Morning Memo at mondaymorningmemo.com for the last 15 years thereabout. What I'd read in the rabbit hole, as you click through the pictures, you start to get these other little bits of information from Roy. And he says, I'm thinking about stepping back and doing a thing. I said, well, I got to see this guy in action. He's been kind of a figure in my life for 15 years. I'd bought his books, the New York Times bestselling trilogy, Wizard of Ads. And they formed beliefs that I resonated with, but I always thought it was almost aspirational, not real. And there was elements that were pulled from it throughout my life, but never actually locked in the big play. So I go to a class, Magical Worlds of the Wizard of Ads, and it's at the Wizard Academy and in Austin, Texas, and we get transformed over 3 days where you're just buzzing with information and ideas and the laws of the universe and the impact of fine art and third gravitating bodies and all of these magical ideas that have you thinking about business in a different way. And I'm thinking as I'm sitting there as a well-paid, highly paid sales and marketing consultant, that I was traveling all around the world doing these things, and realized, wow, this is the universe that I've been aspiring to and thinking about. So I keep on taking classes and classes and classes. Roy starts to get to know me quite well. And in 2017, I become a partner after many, many conversations on the phone and whatnot. That's the path into the Wizard of Ads. There is no resume processed. Um, Ultimately, what it boiled down to was there had to be a better way. And the better way was putting more effort into the right things than to put all of your eggs into the transactional bucket of coaxing, cajoling people into a business proposition rather than inspiring them. And as that hit me, I came to realize that's been my whole life, right? I've been in sales. I've been in this transactional grind, this retail gulag, this automotive space where I was good, really, really good, operationally good, sales good. I knew how to crush this, but only on the transactional side. So I had to see this change. I had to see this change about myself because I knew that there was more and that I was going to have to do something different than I was doing right now. And it all spurred from that moment where I was feeling like I hadn't made it where I thought I could make it. And I knew that there was more in me. So these were the signals that I picked up as I started getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I realized that all this advertising stuff was all the same information that you'd say in training stuff, and all this training stuff is really what we'd say in culture stuff. And by goodness, all of this stuff was the same stuff that you'd apply to your wife and kids in your house, or at your church, or any of these other places where you're interacting with, lo and behold, people, right? That salespeople are people and bosses are people and your wife is a person. Holy cow, who would have thought? But it all ends up being the same core group of things. And that put me on a path. In 2019, I really started thinking about this from perspective that Ray Sagard, another one of our partners, had come up with. I thought it was one of the most brilliant things. It was really the linchpin of what we had going down the rabbit hole of I could be a part of Wizard of Ads. And that's that your brand, your culture, and the experience that you deliver are all intermingled. They're all the three culminating self-referential parts that build a business and grow a business. Well, I believe today that your business is your culture, that your culture is the culmination of communication in your business that communicates with your employees how you intend to do business and serve people. And they're picking up the subconscious and subtle cues, the things that you're not saying but are showing, straight through to the things that you do. And that all reflects in the buying experience. And your employee and buying experience are what make up the stories that we tell in the advertising of your brand. And that we can really elevate those brands that do a wonderful job at serving their people at both the employee and customer level. Those have the ingredients of a great brand. And those are the people that we look for when we look to partner with a client, because we're in it for the long term. And ultimately, this game only works when you're playing the long-term game. Otherwise, just keep doing the transactional stuff, but more of it, and you'll be just fine. You'll be exhausted, but you'll get it done, right? So,
I think the thing that's really good, I've come to terms with, it seems to be exhausting, is when you're attempting to do things that do not appear to fit with who you really are. That's one of the reasons why I like that question we talked about at the beginning. And it
yeah,
sounds like that's where you were in your role before you discovered maybe this air quotes here, different way of doing business. Because, and I'll say this, I'm going to let you respond to this. I actually think some of the tactics will work in a lot of different situations. It's just a matter of getting cohesive or congruent, whatever the right word is, with who you really are, that brand, that culture, and things like that. And I think culture spills out. I work with leadership teams, so I see this quite a bit. I go in and I spend time with companies' leadership teams, and I could talk about us building a culture within a company, but truthfully, the culture becomes the leaders and the leadership of the people that are there. I could come up with all types of things, but really what I want to do is I want to identify kind of that first question I asked. I want to identify who Ryan really is so that we could work that culture. We could make sure that we're in alignment with what we're doing, and we can kind of make all that match up. To me, I'll say it this way, and then I'll pose it as a question. To me, it seems like what most of us need to do as leaders, people that are running companies or organizations, we need to identify who we are so that we could then project that when we spread the nets of our advertising and marketing and all out into the world. Question mark.
right. Well, look, so a lot to unpack there. A leader, a culture is what a leader will tolerate and what a leader stands for. And those two things are inextricably intertwined. You can't disconnect those things. But your leader doesn't get to control the culture, right? At the end of the day, the leader gets to direct and lead the culture and point people in the right direction. Think of it this way: we have four people on the ocean of life. We have surfers, we have navigators, we have drifters, and we have drowners. The surfers are taking the waves of opportunity as they come. When the wave isn't as delightful as it could have been, they blame the wave. The drifters are just bobbing around, hoping for somebody to show up and do it for them, while the drowners have a problem for every solution. Now, I'm not talking about the occasional drowning that we've all done in our faith, medically, chemically, financially. I'm talking about the professionals, the ones who are really good at just like, oh, you saved me. Oh, I'm dying again. Right? It's always this ongoing pressure of failure, right? Then there's the navigators. And navigators know one thing that no one else knows. They know that the North Star doesn't move in the sky. And that North Star, because it doesn't move, allows them to pitch the sails towards where they want to go. They can follow the winds and waves of life that are thrashing at your hull, but they allow you to continue moving forward. Let's face it, nobody follows somebody who isn't going anywhere. So until you have a North Star, there's nowhere for you to go. And that's why having principle matters so much, because there's no way you can be a leader without it. It's impossible. And you can't have followers if you're not a leader, and you can't be a leader if you have no North Star, because you can't navigate, right? You have nothing to navigate with. All the other constellations and everything else, all of the distractions that are in our businesses and lives are these wonderful things that tell us things about the sky and have us understand things about the universe, but they don't actually get you anywhere.
And the interesting thing, I mean, we're getting quite existential here, which I love. We're about to head towards the practical is where we're about to go. The interesting thing is that self-awareness is something that I'm just becoming more and more aware of, that just to give a double nod to the word awareness there. And I believe that everyone has principles and values. I just think some people are more aware of what theirs are versus other people. And in just a little while, I'm going to ask you kind of a process of what you do when you step into a business and how you begin identifying that and see if it's a match, and then how you start leading and guiding towards how to do some marketing, advertising, and all that. But I've got one, I think it's just one. Let's go macro question in the industry that you're in, because I think you've got the expertise to answer this. This episode, sometimes I don't like putting timestamps, but this is going to be releasing in early 2025. We're recording right at the tail end of 24. And what I would love for you to do, I'd love your insight on this. What I would love, Ryan, is give some things that you're observing that are trends, things that are moving in your industry and what we're seeing. And I'm going to go ahead and give you my second part of the question so you could just go. And then I also want you to share timeless principles that aren't going anywhere. Because there many people, they want to just ride trends and ignore timeless principles. Some people want to stay with tradition and never look at trends. And so I think with this question, I would love for you to hit a little bit of both. Is that okay? What are some trends you're seeing here in 2025? And then what are some timeless principles that we do not need to ignore?
I think starting off with what we should recognize aren't going to change. The psychology and biology, particularly the biology and neuroscience of people, is not going to change. Right now, we understand that in a foundational way, but there is a world of understanding that we do not have as human beings. What we do know is that they're often directly associated with the laws of nature, right? So we can draw a deep and real correlation to those laws of nature, those truths that be so profoundly true they could not be not true. And I'm thinking about this scientifically in the sense of we should always be questioning science. That is the point of science. but equally as much we can trust that certain things are going to be a certain way. For example, in business, customers are going to continue to want the best price for their money, right? And their money, the customer's money, has to be worth less than the value that you delivered, right? Whatever that is. The second thing they want is choice. They want the autonomy of choice, right? The third thing that they're going to want is convenience. They're going to absolutely want to be convenienced, um, regardless of how that looks in your business. And there's a number of very, very specific modeling ways to do that. But those are things that are true that are not going to change. There's communication elements that are not going to change. The 10 things that I talk about in my book coming up in Frictionless is around motivation are not going to change. There's way more nonsense that you can learn about motivation, but these first 10 things are the 10 things that are going to get you 80% of the way there, right? And if we can just get the basics right, we're going to have an awful lot more success in growing from there after we've got a good, solid foundation, right? So those aren't going to change. That's the psychology, right? Which is driven by the biology, like dopamine, like oxytocin, the things that have us do the things that we do. Now, the trends that are going to affect us are going to be things like social media, which has already affected us and will continue to affect us. The trends are AI and the um, ability to either allow AI to replace our novel thoughts, right? Because AI cannot produce a novel thought, it can only produce a reductionary thought. Um, or we can use it to augment our iterative and innovative thoughts as human beings. Content is going to explode on the internet. Most of it is going to be absolute garbage. Not because it's generally bad content, but it's reductionary content. It is content that does not propel us forward. It only keeps us and satisfies our cognitive biases, our confirms our existing beliefs, because we can literally get anything to confirm our existing beliefs. When you start to realize that for every proverb, there was an equal and opposite proverb, you start to realize this is not new. Right? Anything that you want to believe, you can believe, and now you can believe it with the force of AI to reinforce everything that you want, right? The reality is you have to start thinking for yourself, and you have to start standing for something, which is going to come with compromise. It's going to come with sacrifice. It's going to come with some level of struggle. And that's where your real worth lies as a human being.
I'm glad you brought up AI because that's obviously a hot topic. And I agree with you that the quantity of stuff, the quantity of stuff, posts, ads, things like that. I mean, I'm seeing on my feeds now, I turned my advertising over to AI and, I'm just sitting here in Arizona doing nothing and all of that. Are you excited about AI? Concerned? Cautious? What is your personal take on what we're seeing with this technology?
I am absolutely so excited. I am so excited for two very weird reasons. I'm excited because it allows us to spark a creative constraint, right? There's going to be so many people that are going to use it and feel like they're done once they've got it done, that they don't even have to get involved, that they're going to put out such pedestrian content that it's going to be so easy to stand out amongst that crowd. So easy. They're going to be absolutely tragically bad, that we're going to win the game by just being distinctive in a different world, right? The second thing is that it does spark this idea. The content for those people who take that foundation and then put their spin, their truths, their values, and their principles, their beliefs, their true consequence on it are going to be so much more potent than the people who are phoning it in with AI. AI is not going to take anyone's job, but somebody using AI is absolutely going to take your job.
So good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm very excited about it too. I mean, I think it's a valuable tool, and I emphasize the word tool because that's what it's been for me and us, even with some things that we're doing with this podcast and things like that. It doesn't replace what we're doing right here. It doesn't replace. It's fascinating what you said, that conviction, because I have noticed I'm actually preparing to do something kind of weird. It'll be right around our 300th episode. I'm actually going to interview Chat GPT. I'm going to do a full on interview. And one of the things I've noticed is that it doesn't have any conviction. I can sway it with my question to be agreeable or disagreeable. If I ask it to disagree with me, it can do that. If I ask it to agree. So that conviction is so important. So here's my question, Ryan. How can we tell when people have convictions or not? Because there's a lot of people that are just going with the flow of whatever this technology, this tool is doing. So, and this is kind of starting to get into how do you know who to work with? So how can we tell who has convictions and who does not?
We're going to know who has conviction and who doesn't by the feedback loop that comes from it. And that's the Google reviews, the Yelp reviews, where the people specifically say they said they would do this and they did it, right? They said that they were going to inflict this self-imposed pain on themselves and they did, right? It's not about nobody cares about a 5-star review in 2025. Everyone cares about a 1-star review and how that company responded to the problem when a problem arose, because there's no infallibility in humans, just like there's no infallibility in ChatGPT, right? There's flaw in existence. It's how you handle that and how you respect that person. How do you keep it human and how do you serve at the highest level? And that's going to come back from other people because you can't toot your own horn. You can just do the right things and then a little bit more.
So I believe you work quite a bit in the home services industry. Tell me and the listener, define that industry, and then tell us kind of what you can learn in that industry that is applicable to someone that might be outside of it. Because I think that's going to frame the remainder of our conversation as we talk about some techniques and tactics and strategies. So
Yeah.
home services industry, tell us more about that.
Well, and I'll put a little qualifier out there in so much as I love home services. That's typically where I hang my hat. But I serve the services industry that are typically higher average ticket sales, longer purchase cycles. That's my sweet spot from a place where I want to work. The Wizard of Ads now services basically higher ticket items, longer purchase cycles in any industry, be it B2B, B2C, direct to consumer, online, offline, all that's jazzed. So we have solutions across the board. I love home services, and I love it because of their fantastic attitudes, their really helper mentalities that they have, these servant mindsets that have a desire to do something more complicated than the basics, right? It's when you're solving a little bit harder problem, you very quickly get in the weeds of trying to overeducate the client, which is a space that I struggled in the retail world of how much do you need to sell here and how much do you just need to communicate. There's different paths. So to that end, what does that look like? The reason why home services is interesting is because it's two things. One, it's externally triggered, right? Something outside of the person has happened for them to have to call you, right? Something broke. The second thing is that it's a grudge purchase. No one's doing it to fulfill their identity as a human being, right? For not taking the people out back and saying, "Hey, come check out my new air compressor. This thing is amazing. Look at my hot water tank. This thing is the Bath Splasher 6000. Everyone's got to have one of these things." Doesn't happen. Now I'm trying really hard to make it happen, but um, I have an idea around a Toto toilet, the G400. We're going to rename it to the Marriage Saver 6000 for a variety of reasons that we can go on to another episode. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is finding a space where we can tell an ugly duckling business story in a way that has people go, "Them my boys. I want those people in my house." Boys, girls, I'm being gender neutral here. What matters is that they're identified as their guy in the business. And that's not easy to do because one, something has to break. Two, no one wants to think about their home service stuff, plumbing, electric, or HVAC, or doors. They don't want to think about that stuff. They want them to just exist invisibly and do the thing. And not only to have a positive anchor associated to a negative trigger, but then to be the first people that they call and trust to do the work when they show up because we have already established a relationship before the customer showed up at Google.
Mhm. You heard it here first, folks, that Ryan could be disrupting the toilet industry in the not too distant
Toilets, just,
future. So we'll be looking forward to that. That'll be exciting. That's probably an industry that needs addressing. But one of the things I
Yeah.
love about home services is that it is very clear that they solve a problem.
Mhm.
And one of the things I even struggle with what I do, I mean, I work with leaders and leadership teams. I help them with strategy. I work with them to be more proactive instead of reactive, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? I can't help the temperature go from 85 degrees in the house down to 68 in the middle of summer in Arizona or whatever. How
Mhm.
important
Mhm.
is it in your industry for a problem to be solved?
Well, this is why I focus predominantly in the essential services space. There's more plumbers that have saved lives than doctors. HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, is no longer a luxury service. It is absolutely a life-saving service when you're sitting in Arizona at 109 degrees heat. Now, it's a dry heat, but it's a heat nonetheless, right? And then you have electricians. Now, if you don't have electricity to your HVAC system, it's the life support system of your life support system, right? There's electronics on heat pumps nowadays and water tanks and all of these things that service us at the highest level. Our communication devices need electricity. These are the essential services of the certainly of the planet. Ultimately, what it boils down to is it is absolutely crucial that these companies thrive. I have strong feelings about how this industry is right now, and I'm concerned about it in a lot of ways. But I'm also serving it where I can at the highest levels and intend to serve it at the highest levels as well. My job is to get that particular company that I've chosen to align myself with, or that I have brought in for other partners to align themselves with as a Wizard of Ads partner, and serve at the highest level so that they get noticed and stand out above the crowd so that they can run a profitable, healthy company. When you said that customers are looking for, how do I sell this stuff? Well, they're not just looking for you to solve a problem. They're looking for you to solve the problem first, empathetically, second, competently, and third, conveniently. Those are the three building blocks of any service industry, but fundamentally of the essential services industries.
Let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. Let's just say that Super Cool Joe's HVAC gives you a call and they
Mhm.
and they want you to step in. What are some of the first things that you want to know about Super Cool Joe, which I just came up with that name, so that might be a clue for you. But you got Super Cool Joe HVAC that's somewhere in Arizona, which is where I'm parked right now here for the winter. And he gives you a call. You know, we've talked about principle, we've talked about how important conviction is, things like that. What are you wanting to know when you first start interacting with Joe?
Yeah, I want to know Joe, or the epitome of Joe, who is representing the alter ego of Joe. I want to know first what their vision is. Where are they going with this company? Is this a 3-year play, a 10-year play? Is this a pass to my kids play? What is that situation? Because that's going to inform how we deliver the creative. The second thing I want to know is where their purpose and mission is in life, and I'm not talking about the pedestrian knowledge that so many people have brought forth about purpose and missions these days. I have a very specific terminology based off of a lot of research that I believe to be true based off of historical information and data that we share. Ultimately, that is going to tell me what their beliefs are, what they believe to be true, and they're both, you know, profoundly true things, good and bad, both dualistic, right? But what are their values? What are the things that they're willing to do? What hills will they die on? What things will they do to punish themselves? And then what can we do to symbolize that into what the customer cares about most in air conditioning in Phoenix,
Mm.
right? When we get the symbolic concept of that right, then we can put that to market in a bunch of different ways. Now, some ideas are cute and clever. Other ideas are campaignable. They can last 5, 10, 15 years. And we're looking for campaignable ideas. We need something with legs. Otherwise, it just becomes cute and clever, which ultimately turns into unmemorable, right? You can't hold their interest. Getting anyone's attention is easy. Keeping it is really hard, right? And then embedding it is the secret sauce.
Right. One of the things that I run across with a lot of business owners is they're way in deep with tactics and they're very short on strategy. That's one of the things I attempt to work with them on. How did tactics versus strategy relate to when you step in the door? I think you just addressed some of that, but let's say someone picks up the phone, let's say Super Cool Joe calls you and says, listen, I really want you to come in and run a bunch of Facebook ads for me so we could get some more revenue coming in. How do you
Mhm.
respond to Super Cool Joe when he says a tactical, something tactical versus what you know needs to be more of a campaignable or strategic, is the way I would word it, approach?
Mhm. With compassion and empathy, Tim, at the end of the day, they
That means
all
as
come
nice
to
as
us
you
like
can
that.
without saying, Joe, you're wrong.
Oh, right. Well, and it's because they are wrong, and it's factually wrong, not opinion wrong, and that matters. And it's not because I don't care. It's because I do, right? Ultimately, when you have a situation where a person's coming in based on a channel, that is super normal because people are equating the outcomes to results when what they didn't catch was the whole setup for the magic trick, right? What did we have to do to get that elephant to appear on stage and astonish everyone? Well, David Copperfield has an answer for that. I wish I knew the answer. I'm sure somebody has ruined that magic trick for somebody, and I'm not going to go looking for it because I want to be astonished next time. What it boils down to is we're trying to figure out the magic trick, and that requires infinitely more setup strategy, right? Than the ta-da moment of the Facebook ad showing up. Great. Running Facebook ads may be the right solution for super cool Joe's HVAC company, but it also may be a hyper inefficient path forward that's just going to spend money for the sake of spending money and not getting any short or long-term result. So to serve Joe at the highest level, I would say, tell me a bit about what you want to do. Where do you want to go with this thing? How long are you keeping it? What is the game that we're playing? And what are the rules to that game so that we can play within the rules and then figure out all the ways that we can step outside to win, right?
Mm.
Ethically, morally, legally, but equally as much in a distinct way. We're not going to win this game. Can you market your company and grow your business and make money doing things that we don't do? Yep. Will you grow and hit a ceiling doing it? Yep. That's just pure math, right? There's only so many human beings in the population, only so many of them are going to buy, and you can either grind them into paste to buy your stuff, or you can get more of a pie. You can also get a bigger pie by going into another market, but you're still getting your piece of the pie. We're basically taking an extra share of the same pie because more people want our piece than the other piece, which gives us the larger piece. That takes time because people have to have something break in our world, right? They have to have had their guy that they already have, the devil they know, let them down, right? And then they have to be willing to know, like, and trust us over the swath of other 2,000 operators in Phoenix, Arizona right now that would be happy to do it. Half of them that would be happy to do it for less than any price that you're willing to quote ever. So we have all of these loggerheads that we have to figure out to do something that is going to be valuable to people. This doesn't change whether you're running a church or an HVAC company or a restaurant. All of these things hold true because those principles don't change. And that's why Facebook matters at the very end of this conversation. The very first thing that matters is, what are we trying to achieve? How are we going to achieve it is the last thing, but why are we trying to achieve it? And what are we going to do, right? Just like Simon Sinek's golden circle. It's this why. People buy the why. Let's find the why. And let's represent symbolically the why in the message that we put out there. And let's leverage things like entertainment until such time as they need your thing, right? Because when they hear your ad, they're not going buy it, right? If you have a Lululemon ad, sure, they could go, oh, I need to have my ass look fabulous. Let's put it on an ad and inspire people to have fabulous keisters, and here we are. We're not doing that. We're selling air conditioners. So air conditioners is like, it's not broke. I'm not fixing something that's not broke. I want my thing to be invisible. And that's not going to be the win in this strategy. So knowing the industry, understanding the landscape, and then taking the path of least resistance until such time as they're ready to buy, and then showing up in their heart for them to make the decision to click on us, pick up that phone, book that appointment with us over somebody else.
Yeah. One of the things interesting that I think I heard it on your Advertising in America podcast episode. I listened to one where y'all were talking about what has become a little bit more of an old school advertising, which is radio and TV. And it was odd when you were just talking, I was thinking about how in our real estate companies years ago, we used to do door knocking, and hanging flyers on people's doors and, putting them in their mailbox, which you're not supposed to do, by the way. And it got me thinking about analog versus digital, or really what it got me thinking about, Ryan, was all the choices that Joe has.
Right.
And which also means all the choices that you have as someone who's advising Joe on the best route to take. And I think one of the things I tell my wife this all the time, this is probably showing my age. I'm 61 years old now. And it's like, you know what? I'd like to have 3 choices. I don't want 103, but we've got a lot of choices right now for spreading the nets or getting the word out about Joe's business, correct? And just whatever you want to respond to with that. I mean, do we have too many choices? Maybe we have more options. I mean, I guess that's good, but it also confuses Joe.
It does confuse Joe because everyone who's selling a channel is pretending to be a marketer when what they actually are is a salesperson selling a channel. And it's excruciating because there is literally millions of those people to me and to my other 80 partners that are my equals and peers in this adventure that we're on. And there is certainly other organizations that stand for the same things that we stand for because they seem to be these lost fables of marketing, when in fact they're the first principles of communication, right? They are the biology and psychology, the neuroscience of communication that we're working from. So we monitor radio every day of every year. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, we're media agnostic for starters. We love radio because it's efficient, but radio is not always the solution, right? We love TV because it's provocative and we can leverage multiple stimulants of the human brain at one time. But it's not always the answer. There's a production cost to that pulls the cost. And certainly to a $3 million operation, we're not selling to Apple here. Apple's not our client. Ultimately, what it boils down to is picking the channels like radio, like television. There really is only a few options. There's written word, right, where you can read a thing. There is visuals, right? Those could be video or static image, or there could be spoken word, right? The spoken word has the most powerful impact from a retention and recall standpoint. It has a 5 times longer durability in the brain than a visual stimulant. A visual and a written or a spoken together are going to give you a 6 times, and a written, spoken, and audio combination is going to give you a 7 times combination. So that's why TV ads can be powerful, because you now have written words on screen while you're also doing another thing that you can embed. The trick here is frequency, how repetitious you show up in the customer's purview. The impression count matters. And I'm not talking about the doom scroll impression that you don't actually even get seen on. I'm talking about the impression from the billboard, from the truck driving by, from the radio ad that you heard, from the television ad that you saw twice that week. When we get the math right to the neuroscience that has already been researched for 30 years on how much it takes to get retention and recall to move from the initial part of the brain that holds things for about 7 seconds, like a RAM of a computer, to about 7 days, which is erased with sleep, like defragging an old PC to clean up that brain a little bit, back to the chemical part of the brain, where people sit there and remember your thing 30 years later. These are the songs that you know 2,000 sets of lyrics to 2,000 songs that you never wanted to know the lyrics to, right? They get in there and they stay there, whether you like it or not. I bet you know a cab company's jingle from 1985 that you can't get rid of, but that cab company's probably not even in existence anymore, right? These are the things that we have to consider when we're actually building the thing that we're building. That's what's going to inform which channel we put it on, because the channel will dictate what the frequency that they'll see it at is. It'll dictate how impactful it needs to be to do the thing. And what duty are we trying to serve? Are we trying to build a bond with our customer, or are we trying to activate a sale? We need to do both, and we need to do both in protection of the brand's reputation. And when we do that holistically as a single solution, we build a business that goes from name recognition to a household name. Now, the difference is people knowing your name is great, but when they know your name and care about it, you have a household name. Is the chemistry. Think of it like bricks and mortar. Every impression is a brick. The emotion is the mortar. If you want to build a big house, you're going to need mortar. You absolutely have bricks, right? But what's more impressive, the pile of bricks sitting on an empty lot, or a McMansion that everyone goes by and looks at, right? And wants to go into, right? And when they actually step into that house, the inside of the house has to be just as nice as the outside of the house, because if it's disappointing on the inside, guess what? They're not coming back. Doesn't matter how pretty it is on the outside. You have to deliver on the thing. And even better, when you put something that's in that house that kind of surprises and delights them a little bit and goes, "Ooh, I want a little bit more of that." Have you seen the thing? That's delight. Now, delight is a driver of oxytocin, not dopamine. Dopamine's never going to win this game for you. When you get people feeling the oxytocin of your brand because they've been inside of it, now you've got repeat business, 5-star reviews, unsolicited referrals. You've got to go see this house. You've got to go inside and check it out. You've got to see what they've got. You're going to love it, right? These are the foundational things that don't change. The channels are going to change. AI is going to mess with channels and YouTubes and ChatGPTs and search on ChatGPT. All this could change. And that's okay. There's really smart people that we talk to that help change the change, right? To get it
Right.
on and give you the present. But there's all the stuff that's not. Door hangers, love them, right? Truck grabs, amazing. A plane that's got a thing towed behind it, we've done that before. We'll do it again. A guy in a gorilla suit holding a sign, absolutely in the right strategy as a whole.
So one of the challenges that most business owners have is they're fighting for attention, not their
Mhm.
attention, for getting the attention. There's so much noise. And you said it earlier, AI is going to add more noise out there. I may have heard you talk about it or may have seen it, but let's just say Joe goes down the gimmick route to cut through the attention and he says, I want a busty woman that's sort of sweating and looking wet with a low cut shirt on a billboard and says, hot wife. You know, I've seen that all over. We travel a good bit. Those are all over, by the way.
Mhm.
And maybe they work, maybe someone's selling it. Where do gimmicks fit into this? Because they really kind of bother me, but when does something become a gimmick versus strategy? And then I want to ask about frictionless before we finish up here.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, there's a couple questions you got to ask. Could I take a picture of a beautiful woman and say hot wife, keep her cool at Joe? Could we take Joe's logo off of that, put somebody else's on it? So how did it work, right? Did Joe get any more business from it, or did Joe just startle someone? Now, the very first time that was put out there, it probably got a few phone calls, and it could possibly got a whole bunch of phone calls, and some of them may have had to do with service and a bunch about maybe checking the moral standings of the people making those decisions. It's hard to say. We don't know. Um, but what I do know is that gimmicks work until they don't, right? Anything that works fast is certain to not work long. Things that take longer to work tend to last longer. This is the difference between a one night stand and a marriage. What do you want from your customer? Well, you know, that's the question you've got to ask yourself. And that's why we tend to focus on higher ticket, longer average sale products that have a bit of complexity to them, because there is a large buy cycle and a large lifetime value of customer there that can justify the endurance needed to grow this business, and the spend that goes along with it too in growth stages. So gimmicks, if we were to pull back from the word gimmick and just say sales activation as a whole, if sales activation is all you do, there is a profoundly important graph that exists in the marketing world from Binet and Fields that shows the sawtooth that hits the natural demand ceiling of any marketplace. And it's consistent. It'll stay flat all the way along, and it'll work and then stop, work and stop. And you just have to keep working. This is the transactional world we're in. That's the hard part. If we do that in conjunction with branding, the branding is going to be a set of stairs that eventually oversteps and supersedes and goes beyond the sales activation. The sales activation feed the beast. The branding compounds. This is sunk cost. You're not going to get anything more than what you get. The branding is going to go past that and give you your disproportionate share of market. It's going to take 3 to 5 years to do that. Anybody who tells you that it's going to happen in 6 months, you're going to notice it in 6 months of a branding campaign. In the first 6 months, it's going to be torture, and you're going to spend a bunch of money and not get anything for it. But that's why people don't brand very often, is because there is this duration that they have to go through. But the real meat here happens in years 3, 4, and 5. It pays for itself in year 2 and forward as a rule, depending on, of course, some uncontrollables that nobody can manage to affect. Ultimately, what we're talking about here is, what do you want out of the business? Now, if Joe has a business that he's going to sell in 3 years, don't bother wasting your money on a brand. Just dump all of your money as aggressively as you can into sales activation, gimmick driven, paying as much as you can for a paid lead, all of this stuff that you like, because let me qualify that. You're going to pay as much as you can. You're going to pay as much as you can because these are bidding systems and people pay top dollar for that lead and position, right? If you hope to get the click, you have to pay the most, right? Our strategy is a combination of doing that where you have to, reducing that as we go, and spending more or as much up until we hit a diminishing returns threshold on your brand and then stop spending. The two in conjunction take a business at $9 million at 12% marketing budget down to 4% marketing budget at $50 million, spending all the money they can spend. Now, 4% of $50 million is still a whole bunch of money, but it's only 4% of your total advertising cost, right? Of your total revenue.
The word frictionless, I keep seeing that in your stuff. So you've got a project that is talking about friction within business and becoming a frictionless business. Tell me a little bit more about that and what are you working on there?
Hewlett Packard, that David Packard of Hewlett Packard said, there's nothing more dangerous than leaving marketing to the marketing department. And I'm a big believer in that, so much so that I started investigating what will help our customers, our clients grow disproportionately faster and more profitably. So I started studying the elements that come along with that. And there's 12 major things that are all oriented towards how you're communicating things in your business, consciously and subconsciously, to your employees and customers that determine whether or not you've got a healthy culture, a thriving culture, or a survival culture, or a toxic culture, and a fixed culture versus a growth culture, a creative culture versus a pedestrian culture. All of the things that we look at from a thriving and surviving standpoint, and the relational and transactional as well, all fit into these worlds. Well, all of this stuff, when we start to analyze it, goes, hey, if we just make adjustments along the way in all of these 12 different components affecting your business, marketing, sales, curation of product and pricing, how you help people empower people in your business, how you help them master their craft, all of the things that we're talking around motivation of not only the customer, but the employee and frankly yourself. All of these things are the things that are affecting mindset, efficiency, productivity, growth, and profitability. What if we just talked about those things and started giving our clients a pathway forward to getting out of their own way and growing past the length of their shadow so they can be tall enough to ride the next ride? And that's where growth comes from. So many companies get into this $3 million, $5 million ceiling, this $10 million ceiling, and that's it for them. They can't grow because they haven't realized the more subliminal, less obvious things that are actually slowing their growth, not propelling it forward. And that's been my path for the last 7 years is if we're going to market well, and if marketing and branding is the culture, and the culture is going to drive the buying experience, well, what if we helped our clients improve their culture and buying experience so that our branding got better? Now we're the secret sauce that everyone needs to be able to propel themselves forward, whether we are able to directly service their account or not. We can be a beacon of virtue and value in the industries that we serve. But it doesn't stop there, because all of those same things that I learned about advertising that were true to sales and sales training are equally as true to our family relationships and our community relationships. And that kind of information just needs to be in the universe in a consumable, coping level way. So I'm trying to distill it down into something where people can just get the basics right, go back to the ABCs and build the foundation from something solid and stable, no matter where you are in your business or personal journey.
So you're obviously putting it in book form. When will the book, I don't know, do you have any definitive dates, or are you still
we haven't
in that
landed
creation process?
We're on chapter 9. We know that there's about 14 chapters. We've already mapped everything out, and the path is consistently moving forward. We anticipate the end of Q1 is when we're going to do it. As to when we officially launch the book, is still in question, of course, because publicists and all those things have opinions about best times to do things.
So,
So
all right, we've talked about a lot of cool things. If someone wants to connect with you, either be on a wait list or whatever for the book, or reach out to, the wizard, or, whatever, tell people where they could find you. And then I've got one more question and we'll wrap up.
you got it. Four places to find me. Wizardofads.com, of course, for the main site for Wizard of Ads. The Wizard of Ads .services website is specifically to my clients and how I'm handling things within the Wizard of Ads agency. My personal page is ryanchute.com. And finally, on all of my social medias, you can find me pretty much anywhere at Wizard Ryan Chute.
Ryan, we're Seek, Go, Create. Those three words: Seek, Go, Create. I'm going to allow you to choose one of those words, or force you, if that's the way you want to look at it. Choose one, and why, it just means more to you. It's like, ooh, I like that word better than the other two. Seek, go, or create, and why?
Golly. Well, I can say that I am a seeker by nature. I'm an asker by nature. Um, I am highly adaptable. I believe in Darwin's philosophy around it's not the strongest or smartest that survive, but those most able to adapt. So I am looking for that innovation and iteration all the time, but I really have no problem in just implementation, right? I like to build the plane while I'm flying it, um, and by nature it is a creative process. It is absolutely not about accept the norm, right? That idea of authentic creation. So, do I have a good answer for you? It's like yes. The answer is yes. All three. What's three absolutely astoundingly fantastic words to tickle the fancy?
Well, very good. The thing that I love about it is that, it's not as if we just talked about the tactic. Obviously, you're such a great deep thinker. I mean, some of these responses have been like just had such depth to them. And I appreciate that. I highly recommend, if you've been listening in, go connect with Ryan. Obviously, his personal site, I'm guessing, is where his book's going to be mentioned, as it's getting close here. Again, this is probably being listened to in early 2025. Sounds like it's a few months out, but check that out. He is a wizard of ads. Go check him out there. And I appreciate the deep and thoughtful answers to what could have been trivial and tactical type responses. So go check out Ryan. I appreciate you listening in here at Seek, Go, Create. New episodes on YouTube and all the platforms every Monday. Keep making those comments and sharing and doing all the things you do. We keep having people giving us tips over at seekgocreate.com/support. I appreciate all of a sudden getting a message that someone gave us $50 just because they love what we're doing. So thank you for those people that keep doing that. That is awesome. Until next time, just thanks for listening in. Until next time, continue being all that you were created to be.